Hey everyone, Jamie, Port St. Lucie Mortgage Brokers. Hope you're having a fantastic day and a fantastic start to 2024. Today I wanted to talk about refinancing. I'm getting a lot of inquiries, a lot of calls from friends, from um, previous clients and clients that have found me online asking me about options for refinancing. So I kind of wanted to touch on this. I kind of made a few notes here if you kind of see me glance over here. But I wanted to touch on specifically refinancing to pay off debt. I know that the new year doesn't come alone. It comes usually with some debt from the previous year, the holidays, vacations, and it's important to spend that quality time with family. But, especially with inflation, it's expensive to do basically anything at this point. So I wanted to talk about if it makes sense to refinance, what you should look for doing. So actually, let me scale it back. I really want to touch on number one, taking simple steps to see your financial situation, and I'll touch on that, the reasons why. Number two, if the steps that you could take to make sure that you're saving funds, so that way you don't have to get into the situation if you're not there. And then if you are refinancing, then what you should look at and some of the steps that you want to take in the process of refinancing to ensure that you're getting the best deal and that it makes sense for you to even refinance to do so. And then lastly, I'm going to touch on, let's assume it doesn't make sense for whatever reason, what steps you could take to make sure you're ready whenever the interest rate environment or your financial situation changes, to make it make sense for you to refinance and get the best out of the going through that process, making it efficient and beneficial to you and your family. So let's start with the simple steps to know your financial situation, to be financially aware of where you stand. So number one, um, a spreadsheet. Sounds simple, but a lot of there in today's world, we live in a subscription world, right? Everything you have to subscribe for, and it's very easy to do. Sometimes just click a button on your phone and now you're subscribed, and it just keeps charging you every month or whatever, or every year. And we forget what those items are. And sometimes they're very minimal. They could be $9.99. You kind of glance through your bill, you don't even see it if you even look at your bill. So it adds up. And a lot of people that I speak to, they don't know how many subscriptions they have and how much money goes towards those things. And it goes from everything from subscribing to like the Netflixes of the world, but even to read a magazine nowadays, sometimes online you have to subscribe. So it's just crazy. But I find that a lot of people don't know what bills they have until they really go through it and jot it down. That's my first step. My first tip. The second step is learning to go through the process of saving money when possible. I just had to purchase a car actually about a year ago now, and if anyone that personally knows me, I hate buying cars. I will drive a clunker till the wheels fall off, and my last car almost did. But so I had to buy a new car because I'm not going to drive my family in an unsafe vehicle. So I had to go through that process, and it taught me to kind of go through the motions of having to look for that deal. In today's world, again, we look at Amazon, boop, 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 click a button, we save, and you save 5% and you go on your business. But especially with these big purchases, housing, right? We want to make sure that we're really shopping for some things that not only save us money today, but in the future. So if you're buying a house, let's say, are you buying a house with a 20-year-old roof or 15-year roof, right? Because an expense is going to be coming. Number one, your insurance is probably going to start increasing over the first few years, and then you're going to have to figure out a way to pay for that new roof. Same thing goes with cars. If the car has a problem or it's an older car, it may not last as long as you really need it to. So shopping, getting into the habit of always trying to find a deal, I always find it to be very beneficial for my client. All right. So now let's get into the meat and potatoes of this conversation, which is really refinancing. So for those that don't know, I've been doing this since 1998. That's all I've basically done my whole life. Um, So it's 20 something years. Yeah, old. So you know, the one thing that I've seen is with experience comes, that hindsight vision of 2020. And you look back and you're like, man, if I only knew, and things like that. So I'll share a couple of those right now with you. Basically, going through the early 2000s, the tech bubble really didn't impact, unemployment too much, things like that. But I do remember, especially in the mortgage industry, there was a time there where it was kind of shaky. Some values had started going down, and they were kind of lingering on, maybe, kind of taking that dip over. And it never really did happen in 2000. The government came in and, all this fun stuff, and they put a lot of money into the economy. And then a few years later, obviously the financial crisis happened, and we all know what happened there. Now, what led from that 2000 or that 2008, there were a lot of people that found themselves kind of struggling, and they found an easy way, and lenders found a way to make money doing this, which is by refinancing clients to pay off their bills. And this is how these 100% financing mortgages came about. And I remember we used to do 125%. That was at that point even common, go over what the value of the house was to refinance. And a lot of people did save a lot of money. I mean, it literally cut thousands and thousands of dollars off their monthly expense, and it made it overall a better way to live and more manageable. But what I learned, that 2020 vision, is that a lot of people may have kind of put a band-aid on it, but didn't really solve their problem. And I'm worried that I'm starting to see kind of repetition of this, because I'm getting these calls from again, friends and past clients saying, hey, I have X amount of debt. What should I do? Should I look at refinancing? And again, it's not that you should or you shouldn't do. I'm not here to say that. But what I am here to do is just, kind of take the proper steps. So number one, know your bills. Number two, before you get to that point, obviously try to have yourself in a good financial situation. Never over, indebting yourself, if that's the right term. But then you get to, hey, I'm finding myself in this situation, and I'm not sure what options I have. So refinancing into, and again, in this market, which is different than back in the early 2000s, we find ourselves coming off of very low interest rates. A lot of people have these 3-4% interest rates, even twos. And now it's like, hey, I want to refinance. What's the rate? It's like 7 or 8 or 6 something. It's just really high. It's 2-3 times as much as they currently have on their mortgage. But the debt that I'm starting to see, is actually high too. So maybe it still works out where the person could save $100, $200, $300, $400 a month. Now, does that, my question here is, does that get you out of the situation that put you there, right? So let's say it was a $300 or $400. If you're able to save $300 or $400, and that eliminates all your debt, and basically puts you in a situation where you don't have to use your debt or credit cards to to live, and you can pay vacations and maybe have a little nest egg, then great. I always say that's a great time to refinance, right? If you're able to save $1,000, most likely, yeah, right, because that's going to give you that budget to continue moving forward. But keep in mind, if the rates continue to go down, you may want to refinance again, and then that puts you in a situation where, now do you have equity to refinance again? Are you going to qualify to refinance a year later, 2 years later? Maybe not. Those are things that we don't know. But there's a lot of lenders out there that, if you were to call them, and sometimes they're calling you, asking you, hey, do you have credit cards? Yeah. Do you want to save $300 a month? Yeah. Great, because of course everybody wants to save $300 a month. And they put you in this situation, and they're not looking out for your best interest, right? And when one thing that I learned is that when people are desperate because they are not sure what to do, any solution sounds beneficial. It sounds like a godsend, right? Like, oh wow, I could save $300. But what happens if you're really in the hole $800 a month, right? Does $300 really get you out of that problem, or you're back to putting $500 on a credit card every month? The difference, so keep that in mind when you're going through this process. And every situation is different, so I'm not here to kind of give a blanket statement, but more of the awareness that it is not a one-stop, yes, you should refinance. And then secondly, keep in mind, especially these bigger lenders, and I won't mention any names. If you call me, I'll talk to you about it. But um, they have people out calling out, specifically soliciting these types of cash out refinances, and they come with higher interest rates. Their costs are high, and when someone is desperate, they don't listen to the cost on it. They don't do the math. They're like, I can save $300. Great, I'll take it. And sometimes that pushes them right back to a very high loan to value where they may not be able to refinance down the road or sell their house if the market shifts a little bit. So just keep that in mind. Know who you're speaking with. If you're going through that process with a lender, I always recommend a second opinion. Let it be myself. I can't tell you how many times a client calls me and says, hey, I started the process with this lender. Do you have a minute to look at my loan estimate? I'm more than happy to do that. Unless I could really save you a lot of money, I'm not going to tell you to stop that situation and come over with me. So it's you never have to worry that I'm going to try to sell you on that. Of course, if there's a big difference that you'll benefit, of course I will point that out to you. But it's either going to be like, hey, it makes sense to do, or like, hey, I definitely would not do that, and here's the reasons why. So just use your resource. If it's not me, I always recommend a local lender to work with, because they're a face in here in the community. They're gonna see you. You're gonna run into. I always use the example. They're gonna run into you at Publix, right? So they're more likely to make sure that you're being taken care of versus someone that's in Michigan somewhere. All right. Then lastly, what do you need to do if you do have to wait? Let's say today it doesn't make sense, right? I'm saving you $200. You're in the whole $400 a month, and it just doesn't make sense, or I'm not saving you money because you're going from that 3% to 7% or something along those lines. What do you do? What are just simple steps that you can do? Again, there's no magic here, no silver bullet, but things that you want to take care of. Number one, I would go back to making that list. Very important. I think that's really the key to everything that I've spoken to, is really knowing where you stand. And then secondly, work on your higher interest rate debt, and sometimes the higher payment one. So I'll give you an example. Sometimes I have credit cards that clients are like, well, I'm not going to pay that one off at 0%. Perfect. That makes sense. But if the payment is $200 a month and I could get rid of a credit card that's $300 a month, that's going to save me $100. I could get that $100 and I'll put that. Now I have $300 to play with. So it might not be that big of an extreme example where it's at 0% versus something at 20%, but try to manage it, high interest credit cards, but also try to get rid of the higher payment ones, because that's going to give you the cash flow to, number one, survive for a longer period of time, and then number two, to once you do pay that off, if possible, then use those funds to speed up the payments on these other bills. But hopefully that helped a little bit. I'm getting a lot of these calls, and instead of working with one client at a time, maybe I get this out, and if this prompts a call to me, I would appreciate that, obviously. And if you have any questions, please feel free to give me a call. Use me as a resource, and if not me, please use someone else here locally in Port St. Lucie. So other than that, I hope you got some value from this video. If you did, please click the subscribe button. I'll add a video right over here so you can continue watching my material. And if you have any questions, let me know. And other than that, have a great 2024.